Good day, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Living the Dream, and I remain your host, Chiytwo. Have you ever wondered why is it that you prefer some food to some other ones? Why you have a best food and some other food seems like a mismatch to you? Why do you prefer a particular sport and you wonder how some other sports are even being played? Have you ever wondered why you could survive where you are and you wonder how some people live in their own areas? Have you ever wondered why you feel some level of affinity to some particular type of people who have some different values, and you feel some people without those values, you don't get along with them easily? All these boil down to your habit, your behavior, or your character. We could use these words interchangeably, even though they could mean different things at different points in time. So today, we'll be talking about habits and behavioral change. But first of all, let's start with what habits are. Habits are basically the things we do often. We do almost every other day, or even a day to day. The patterns in which we've created, in which we use to respond to some particular style of stimulus or particular type of reactions around us. For example, you have a very particular pattern in which you eat your food. You could check that within yourself. You also have a very particular pattern in which you talk to some certain set of people. And you do have a particular pattern in which you talk to strangers. Even though this may seem to vary with your mood and things like that, but there seems to be a baseline of a pattern that happen around that. And basically all these are due to how your personality is being molded and how you see yourself and you see the people around you. So, talking about habits, habits could be formed based on quite a number of factors, but today we'll just talk about 3 of them that we find to be very germane to our habit formation. And the very first one of them is our upbringing. Yes, within our own home itself, where you have your father, your mother, and how you grow, or your immediate family, depending on the kind of setup that you have while growing up. Your upbringing is one of the things that really shaped your habit. And I know you could also quickly remember now. You know, I mentioned you have a particular pattern in which you eat your food. Some of us have grown the pattern of eating from while we are very young. You know, some people grow up with the table manners where they will tell them, you don't eat with your mouth full, you eat with the fork and the knife and things like that. And you find them being able to adapt to that, and they still use this methodology even as old as they are now. And you find some people who are quite loose with their table manners, because probably no one paid attention to it when they were young and no one asked them to do it this way or do it that way. They just did it the way they felt like, and they've kept on with the way they felt like. If they've not consciously changed it, they would keep doing it in that way, and everything would seem fine and good as well. The same thing applies to how we do very little things and very mundane things within our life. You know, everyone would have almost a favorite color. Probably not everybody have a favorite color. You have affinity to some things and some particular values, and basically these are due to the things you've learned while growing up. So your upbringing shapes so much about you. It shapes the things around your beliefs, because even within your upbringing you have your own belief system. Whatever religion you grew up with, within your upbringing there are some things in which your religion might have shaped, or the beliefs of your parents might have shaped for you while you're growing up. Be you a Muslim or be you a Christian, you understand the fact that there are some things that are probably taboo within your household based on your religious belief. There are some things that are very encouraged within your household based on your religious belief. And these things are part of the upbringing that would shape your mind, that would shape your personality, that will shape your habit while you're growing up. In some homes, you learn not to eat with your left hand while growing up, because it's part of the religious learning at that time or at that point in time. And you find yourself growing up and still holding that as high esteem, that no, you don't eat with your left hand, you only eat with your right hand. Be it right or wrong is not a debate here. It's just to point at the fact that some of these things we grow up with are all packed in the things we call our upbringing. Some of the beliefs we exhibit are all packed in the things we call our upbringing. You know, some people still believe in ghosts, even though some people don't believe in ghosts, because while they were growing up, probably ghosts were used to scare them to sleep. Probably ghosts were used to make them do some other things. And you realize that even till date, they still nurture the belief of there are ghosts all around them and things like that. I'm not saying ghosts exist. I'm not saying ghosts don't exist. What I'm trying to tell you is some of the beliefs you've nursed from your childhood till now are all part of your upbringing. Some people also believe that being diplomatic is wrong. You should say it as it is. Say it for what it is. It could also be as part of an upbringing, whereby you tell the child is asked to say what it is. You don't need to cut corners and things like that, or you don't need to be diplomatic with people. Just tell them what it is and how you feel it in your mind. So all these are also part of the things that probably come together and be part of our upbringing. You know, I said I'm going to mention 3 things. So the first one is your upbringing within your own home, within your nucleus family. What did you grow up to? What are the culture or what are the norms in which you grew up with, and which are still probably functional for you, which you're still using up until this moment. Some of them may be functional, some of them may be dysfunctional for you. Some of them may be empowering, some of them may not be so empowering for you. But these are part of the habits in which you've grown to adopt. These are part of the habits in which you've grown to exhibit and you showcase time in and time out. The second factor of the things that affect our habit is our environment. The environment we live in, the environment we grow up in. And taking a look at that, you know, imagine someone who grew up in a loud and lousy environment, and you may tend to see them speaking very loud, as if they are shouting. And even when probably the room is calm and you find their voice being at the edge, you find their voice being very loud, and you may wonder, like, why is this guy always shouting? Because for someone who has grown up in a very quiet environment, somewhere very serene, where even when a pin drops you could hear it sound, then the person would naturally tend to talk in low tones because they don't want to probably raise their voice and create echoes or create noise all around. And just these 2 basic contrasts, you find out that the 2 individuals may not even know that they are shouting or they are being very quiet when they talk. But out of the fact that where they grew up, one is in a loud space, and naturally needs to project their voice higher while they talk so that the next person could hear them. And they wouldn't know they've imbibed that as an habit, and they will have to talk aloud naturally because it has become part and parcel of them. While the other person would probably be very gentle when they talk. Now I'm using talking as an example. So they become very calm when they talk, and they speak as lightly as possible because they are quite aware of their surrounding, being almost always silent and don't want to project their voice to show that probably they're speaking. And these 2 basic differences just as a result of the environment they find themselves. And the environment could also be one of the big influence of temperament, where you could say someone is spontaneous and high-tempered, and you have the other person being calm and being reserved and being able to try to dialogue things out and things like that. Probably because one is used to a tense atmosphere and the other person is used to a calm atmosphere. So if someone who is used to a calm atmosphere and someone who is used to a tense atmosphere are exposed to the same stimulus or exposed to the same event, for example, let's say someone hits their car at the back. So let's say case A, for someone who is open to a tense environment right from childhood while growing up, and someone hits the person's car from the back, there's every tendency that the person would calm down and try to make an opera of the whole scene, raising their voice, shouting, telling the person, why did you do this? Why did you do that? I'm not going to take this from you, and things like that. And while for the other case scenario, for the person who is a bit calmer, if someone hits their car from behind, they would also come down, try to check, sir, you've hit my car, and try to talk things out, probably in a more subtle manner, not in so much of an energetic manner, because the first person is open to a tense atmosphere and they tend to display that at every point in time or at most points in time because of the natural disposition of being tense that they have imbibed from their environment. And the other person would be calm and try to discuss or try to not be so energetic about it in terms of probably throwing tantrums, and probably be a bit more calm and try to calm down and discuss, so what do we do from there, things like that. Not because they don't want a solution, but it's just the kind of energy disposition that they have based on their experience, based on their own environment, varies, and they tend to view things and react to things based on those variants in energy level. Then the third thing I would also like to talk about that affect our habits is our cultures. For us here in Nigeria, there are over 200 ethnic groups, and all of them have their own culture, all of them have their own norms and things like that. So the difference and the variance in the norms and culture also influence our patterns of ideology, also influence our patterns of response, also influence our patterns of thinking. You know, while I was talking about the home, the upbringing in the first phase, where I was talking about the nuclear family, now this part opens it up and make it more compounded, because within our culture we have religion influencing it, we have education influencing it, and we even have our societal structure influencing our cultures and norms. And also we have the age and time in which the person is being born into, also affecting and influencing the culture and norms of that particular time. You know, so for a child born, let's say in the mid of the 20s, let's say within 2012, 2013, 14 and 15, where the internet is already in its full-blown space, then you realize that this child is easily predisposed to the internet. They have this large chunk of information at their hand, and the kind of norm and culture that is prevalent within that time, within that space, is way different when you compare it to a child who was born in the late, or let me say in the mid 90s, or let me say in the late 90s, and let's say 1981, 82, 83, 84, because then the internet was just probably in tricklet form, still trying to walk around, still trying to become a thing. Even the whole communication scope was still becoming a thing at that time. So there's this big difference in someone who was seeing the evolution of communication from letters to pay phone points and things like that, to someone born into the full internet age where a lot of things is just at the snap of the finger. So this difference alone could also spark a lot of difference in the culture, in the norms, and in the expectation. And this, one of the core difference in these two is the fact that knowledge, or let me use the word information, is readily available to the latter child, while information was not readily available to the former. Meaning someone born in the late 90s, the 1970s, the 1980s, they don't have all the information even at birth at that time, and they had to grow into the information. But someone born in the 2012s, 2013, there is this mass amount of information right at their disposal right from childhood, because they are exposed to playing with tabs, playing with checking YouTube from childhood, having these lullabies being sung to them from devices and things like that. This vast difference alone in itself is one of the things that affects the culture of that time. And you realize the fact that the difference in the information age alone has made a very wild gap in the cultural differences. Even though they may be from the same ethnic group, they may be from even the same clan, from the same family, there's this level of difference in the culture. Let's use some particular tribes in Nigeria. If you go to the southwestern part of Nigeria, and the way they probably have assimilated difference in culture into their scope of work, you realize that people within the Yoruba version of things, way back in time, they would have to prostrate to their elders, but now that is less prevalent based on the change in culture, the new culture that is prevalent in the society. The things that have changed there is a change in the information accessible to the people, a change in the orientation of the people, and things like that. So even though they may still maintain the same belief of, be it Islam, Christianity, or the traditional beliefs, some of the variants or some of the changes that have evolved have been impacted based on the information that is available or readily available to the general public. So this difference alone has tuned down the value, or has tuned up the value of the cultures that they find acceptable to them within this particular state of time, or with this particular frame of time, and the things that they want to hold in high esteem. So even these cultural differences, you find it embedded within homes, because the change in time, the change in perspective also affect the change in reasoning and the change in the value system within that society in itself. So what this means is that for our own habits, when checking our own habits, we understand the fact that our habits stemmed out from our upbringing, our environment, and the culture we are exposed to. All of these things come together to shape up our personality. But the key thing there to note is this: once we try to analyze ourselves, we check the things that are working for us, the things that are making us functional, the things that are empowering us. Within all these things we've talked about, those that are empowering us, we want to keep them because they help us to do things right and help us to get things the way we want them to do. But for those that are not empowering for us, for those that are looks like a dysfunction for us, we need to understand them, to analyze them, and know how to change them for the better. For example, domestic violence is something that has been fought in Nigeria for a long time and all over the world as well. But as a matter of fact, we need to understand that this level of exposure, the level of exposure has tended to aggravate or reduce the level of exposure to information has tended to aggravate or reduce based on in different areas the amount of domestic violence we find within our community. And this is one of the things I believe everyone in their own community is trying to get reduced as much as possible. And this is something that is dysfunctional to the society because it causes the society more harm than good. And these are part of the things we want to change in our own value system, in our own cultural system, within our own household, within our own environment, such that we could raise good, well-cultured, well-mannered human beings going forward who would add more value to our own society, who would add more value to the life of people around them, who would add more impact to the society all around them, all in an essence. So understanding this variance in our own habits would help us understand ourselves, and at the same time we'll be able to look at other people and understand their own perspective, where they are coming from, the kind of habits they tend to show, understand why they tend to show some of those habits, and how we could help them to manage it better. But first, we need to start from our own self, to know the habits that we are doing that are not empowering for us, the habits that we exhibit that are making or that are causing us some form of setback one way or the other, that we need to manage better, such that on the long run, we become better people, we become better humans who add positively to our own community as well. So, habits are changeable. Habits are changeable. Any habit we've grown with or we've learned over time, we could also change those habits, putting in mind that we need to be more conscious and we need to be a bit more repetitive of those habits, because what we've done over the years, for some people in decades, would not just change by the snap of a finger, but we need to consciously know the ones we need to change and work towards changing them. And that's why we have the behavioral change process. And being conscious about the things we want to change, I think is one of the foremost steps of changing some habits. You know, we could have habits that we know are not very good and we want to change them. The habits could be from the way we talk, the way we address other people, our mannerism, or it could even be as little as the way we eat. And all of these things are changeable. We could always learn new habits, we could always make new changes as long as we are willing to make those changes. In further episode, we'll talk more about behavioral change and how we could go about it. Sometimes we might need the help of professionals to help us through that process to make it more seamless for us. And until next time again, when I see you on another episode of Living the Dreams, so keep living your dreams and keep achieving the things you want to achieve. My name remains Chiytwo, and see you next time.
Ramadan Mubarak.